According to research, using games in teaching can help increase students' participation, foster social and emotional learning, and motivate students to take risks. One study, the popular multiple-choice quiz game Kahoot, found that it improved students' attitude towards learning and boosted their academic scores. Tutaleni Ilonga, who is a game designer, is currently joining us right now to talk to us about how to gamify the Namibian education system. And on the 6th of October, he will be having a talk on this at the Namibia Scientific Society, and is currently joining us in studio. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent.
All right. So how did you come up with the idea of marrying gaming and education? Like, what's the inspiration behind it?
So I've been like in the game development or game design world for the last 6 years now. So the first game we actually worked on was under Enter Africa, where we had to create a game with locations, me and three other Namibians. So the idea to gamify wasn't really going there for us. It's just sort of something that hit us here, where we realized that when we were studying, it was a bit challenging for some of us. And then with some of the kids, it turns out that it's depending now if you're at private or a public school, it's also a bit of a struggle, because a lot of the kids right now are visual students.
Okay.
So they remember things visually better, or they're more or less bound to study better when it's something that's on an app, or it's something that they can utilize or physically touch. Something that we don't have in our Namibian school systems, and something that's being introduced worldwide already, where people are using gamification to gamify their school curriculums and things like that. And I think it would be very intriguing and very nice if Namibians or Namibian government or us that are also like kind of creating a curriculum for it, to get involved in it now, because the last thing you want is 9 years from now. It's when people want to say, oh, we need to get into it. By then the world will already have eclipsed us.
Yeah. All right. So what new element do you think gaming will bring to conventional education?
Well, let's start with mathematics, for example, the ICSI, or let me rather go with history. Before I go with, once I'm done with history, I'll give you an example. So this is a debate that's out open, and I believe that to some extent, the Namibian education system offers qualification and not education. It's still something we can debate about, but I think there's an angle there where sometimes you have a situation where people study, but just to study to get the qualification. A good example with that would be the metal fabrication or the boiler making students. So my understanding is that they're still using drawings to do stuff like that. Whereas if you are hired by a company, they're going to teach you how to use a computer. So now you leave school, you leave passing, but then once you get to the company, it's like, no, we sort of use systems, or we used things to measure that. And I think that's where the risk is. So it's like with the kids going back to the high school now, ICSI, if a child is struggling to study math and the math is on ICSI, wouldn't it be more easier to sort
ICSI being high level,
high level,
okay,
ordinary level, or whatever. But ICSI, let's just put it that way, wouldn't it be easier if you could design a game that would help the kids study? Because remember, the kids just don't want books anymore. They want to use visual TV, they want to use audio language, especially with history, where you can use animation or videos or stuff like that, where they'll remember quickly. Because if you were to take a Namibian student or a high school student, make him watch a movie and make him read a book, let's say Game of Thrones, for example, which one would they remember easier? They would remember what they've seen visually compared to the book, because the book, it's like, it's so much information to like absorb to it.
But you can visualize when you're reading, you do know that, right?
You can visualize, that's also too, but I feel like a lot of people might lean towards more something that's more visual, or something that's more that, which is why I think we should try focusing on gamifying it. Because if you look at the education system now, people keep saying, or what we're reading from the news and newspaper, is that a lot of the money is going into education. But our question is, how is it going through to education? How are you trying to change the curriculum? Because if you're saying it's like that, people will start asking, where are the results? If you're telling me we're going to try and gamify it, then it's easier for us to go out there and say, okay, they're trying to gamify the education system in Namibia. We should give them 2 or 3 to 4 years, because this is not an easy thing. You need to conduct a research, and you need to see what works and what doesn't work.
Okay. All right. So who are you targeting with this initiative?
The how to gamify the education system?
Yeah.
Well, on my talk, I'm basically targeting everyone because this is an industry that affects everyone. As everyone is now aware of, is that the game industry is the industry that makes the most money in the world.
Okay.
But it's not in Namibia, or at least there's some of us that are trying to push it in. So how are we going to introduce it? I think the best step to try and like introduce the game development field in Namibia would be through gamification or gamify before you can focus on culture or everything.
Right.
So, because if you have that, then we can it in a way it benefits everyone. It benefits the ministry because it might make it easier for people to study. It benefits me and you and our kids and whoever because there is now a simpler way where they're going to learn new skills and their brain are going to absorb it quickly because the world is moving in a technology world and Namibia is sort of very behind it and we need to start catching up. And the reason why we can't catch up is not because we don't have the skills, the capacity, or the people. The people are here. It's just a situation where we have to try and maybe explain it to our leaders because they don't seem to understand our language. They only understand the old school way. But then if we can sit down or if we can have like a intermediate who can explain to them how this benefits, this is how we'll move forward and this will make things around us a lot more easier.
Okay. I mean, you did say Namibia is not yet at this stage of understanding gaming together with education. Apart from that challenge, what other challenges have you encountered when developing this concept?
So the concept that we're developing so far, it's still at an early stage.
Okay.
You know, so I guess with the challenges that we face so far, it's introducing it. It's trying to introduce it and trying to create awareness around it and trying to get stakeholders involved to see how they can benefit of this. Because what we are sort of doing is it's something that's going to be very beneficiary in the long run. But the struggles with these kinds of ideas is always a thing whereby people who are, let's say, people who are in a position where they can make it really happen, they don't seem to understand how it works and they rather see it as a high risk. And I think that's where Namibia's economy in the past has suffered is because we've stopped taking risks where they would pay off. Because now it's like, oh, it's too high risk. What if it fails? Well, it's going to fail. So what you might want to do is that you might want to see how it will go for the first 5 years. Because for the first 1 or 2 years, it's either going to be slow or it's going to be fail. It's going to fail, but it's going to start picking up. So the thing is always is that we should give it a try and we should see how far it goes because we're confident that this is going to be very effective because Africa is in one of the continents where game development in general is spiking in terms of profits and in terms of increasing. But then again, it comes back to where does Namibia arrange in this? So, and we're here trying to gamify the Namibian school system. I mean, in Africa right now, apart from maybe South Africa, the other countries, they don't have this. So if Namibia can jump onto it first and be the first to introduce a gamification system, we'll have the focus of each and every other countries because all of them will want something like this in their country. And this is where Namibia, profit-wise, can also increase because it's like we introduced this, so now we can license it out to different countries where they can use it as well.
Okay, but do you think Namibia will be receptive to this new idea of gaming in education? You know, we've had negative stereotypes on video games, but do you think Namibia is ready for this?
To introduce gamification in the school system?
Well, do you think they'll be receptive towards the idea?
I think the idea, I think they will be, I think it depends who you run into again. It's always like that. It's always a subjective thing. I think with the younger generation or the generation of parents that grew up with us, they are more opinionated to this. They're more going to say, we want something like this. But maybe the older generation won't, not because they don't want to, but because they don't understand. So they're going to accept this depending on if we can like explain it to them further and if it also is a thing where we're building it up slowly, because what we want to do is, as we are building this, we want to offer training to different people in different towns as well. So that by the time this comes, they are aware of the skills and we can have a thing and say, in this region, we trained this number of people. That way, when this comes up, it's easier for everyone because, like I said earlier, the last thing you want is 6 or 9 years from now, it's like, we need to jump onto this and then you don't know your talent in the country and you're going to throw it on the wall and see what sticks, and then it's going to be even more expensive and more difficult to like get it running up. That's why we want to like tackle it now.
All right, Tutaleni, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. That was Tutaleni Ilonga, who is a game designer and who will be hosting a talk on how to gamify the Namibian education system. This will be happening on the 6th of October at the Namibia Scientific Society.